Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone to the State of Education. The State of Education, which is at this moment today. And we are here with MISD Superintendent Dr. Cantu. And I want to start off the conversation today, if you could just kind of give us all a little reminder about just how large our district is. So how many schools, how many students, how many teachers, and total staff? What's the size of our district right now?
So right now, as we have been growing, obviously over the years, we now have over 44 campuses. We have about 4,600 total staff. About half of that are our teachers. And we have close to 36,000 students. Our number actually today is 35,733 students.
Wow. So we're talking about a huge entity to try to prepare, plan for everything for this school year to start. So the next question I want to start with is who actually makes the call, makes the decisions in regards to COVID? How does that process work from the top down? How does that go?
Well, it's a very large process. So it started with district leadership coming together and reviewing the safety protocols and recommendations from a large body of information. The pieces of information that come from TEA, governor's orders, local Tarrant County orders, Tarrant County public health authorities. So taking all of that, and those pieces of information also don't always line up. So it's looking at all these pieces, finding where those disconnects are also between different entities, mashing that together and sitting down and developing our protocols. We've also worked closely with other districts. This is a time where communities and school districts have really come together like never before. And so we have talked amongst ourselves more than ever and collaborated more than ever. And so we're also bumping our health and safety protocols up against each other. Hey, we're thinking about this. What are y'all doing? Hey, there's a disconnect between these two entities. Where are we landing on that? So it started with us. We have a really a wonderful director or assistant superintendent for student services and safety and health. We have a fantastic director of health services in Kathy Marsh. We have Bruno Diaz, our new safety director that's come in. And so they've met as a team. My superintendent's cabinet has met as a team, as well as executive council, to review all of these pieces. We have done surveys, just all sorts of stuff to pull a lot of information together. And then from that, we've been able to develop some process maps that direct, so if this, then this happens, how does the process begin? And process maps have been developed for these specific situations.
Yeah, I find it amazing how many times it changes, and today it's this and tomorrow it's that. And all of those directives are coming from the state, right?
Yes, ma'am. The state or the governor or Tarrant County.
Right.
We've been subject to different, when TEA told us one thing, let's see. So really on June 3rd with TEA, we were planning for our hybrid model, right? Because we were told to plan for socially distanced learning where you could have no more than 11 kids in a classroom. Well, that means that only half the kids can come on any day. So we were planning for fall learning to look like buildings at 50% capacity of staff and students. Well, that created a hybrid model like an A-B day. And then in July, TEA came out, the education agency, and told us you have to offer 5-day-a-week in-person learning in order to receive funding. That funding that we receive for ADA makes up about at least 50% of our budget. And so to be able, without that, we can't have school. So that happened on July 5th. So we had to switch to planning for 5-day-a-week and then giving parents the choice of a virtual option. And then of course, on July 21st, Tarrant County Judge Whitley came down with the order that there will be no in-person learning until September 28th. So we had to take our in-person learning and begin to flip that to a remote version separate and apart from our virtual academy that we had set up. And then of course, 7 days later, the AG opinion through Ken Paxton said that you don't have to pay attention to that at all. And so we had to change again last Tuesday and say, okay, we don't have to hold out until the 28th. And so we made that's when we came together last Tuesday. We learned about it about 11:30 from social media. And wow. We had to very quickly make a decision about what that was going to look like, because there had been so much back and forth. We needed a little more time, and we wanted to give time also to watch the virus, but to really make sure that when we do bring students in, they have a quality in-person experience. And so school now is virtual and remote, with the first day of in-person learning being September 8th. So yes, there's a lot of back and forth. There's different people saying different things, and we're trying to manage through that.
We ended up, to get prepared for this, we polled our members and we asked them questions, and I shared those questions with you, and from what I understand, they're very similar to the ones that you keep getting over and over and over and over again. And so if you could just talk a little bit about those frequently asked questions that you get.
Sure. So when someone goes to, about a month ago, we had a true labeled FAQ on our COVID page, where we were putting the questions as they were coming in, and that FAQ, to be honest, it got a little out of control because there were so many questions. We didn't want people to have to scroll through to get to question 262 to find their question that matched the question that had already been submitted. And so we sort of said, okay, we need to streamline this more. And now on our page, if you've selected in-person learning, which right now will be remote, but you can click on that link. If you've selected virtual, you can click on that link. And then on that page, you will see categories. So for instance, right now I'm looking at our in-person learning and all of the categories where people can go through and find the answers to their questions. There's a category for technology, district issue devices, for what's a sample schedule going to look like for my kiddo if I've selected in-person learning, but now we're kind of going remote for the next, first 3.5 weeks of school. General health and safety protocols, face masking, PPE, all of those things. We have a category for what's screening going to look like. What are our screening protocols for students and for staff and for visitors? What's arrival and dismissal going to look like? What's the movement going to look like in the hallways throughout the day? Are you going to have one-way hallways? I mean, we want to know, is it going to be taped down on the floor for 6, marking that 6 feet of distance like we're seeing everywhere? What's the common areas going to look like? What's the cleaning protocols going to be and the disinfecting? They want to know about recess. What's that going to look like? What's transportation going to look like? How do you socially distance on a bus? So all of those categories are there, broken out with with as much detail as we can provide, because we also know that there are every situation is different, and because one of the big questions that we do receive over and over is a very specific question related to someone who is either presenting with symptoms of COVID-19 or has been diagnosed, has an actual diagnosis of COVID-19. And so what we have for that, to hit that on the head, because I know people really want to know, is we do have process maps that are set up. How is it reported? To whom is it reported? And then what are the steps that happen after that? There are very distinct steps that get us down to the point of the person being removed from the classroom when that happens. The students that are remaining, and let's say it's a student presents with symptoms, that student is immediately down to the nurse for an evaluation. The students from the classroom are removed from the classroom along with a teacher. We immediately come in to disinfect that classroom with very high quality medical grade EPA approved disinfectants. So get that classroom safe for people to re-enter. And then when that student goes down to the nurse, then that's where, and for the kiddos that have been removed, that's where the area gets a little bit gray. And people don't like to hear that, but that really is just the reality, because every situation is different, or has the potential to be different. We have to consider things like Was the student wearing a mask? Was everybody else wearing a mask? How far apart was everybody? How long? Were they together more than 15 minutes within a certain amount of distance from each other? Were they outside when this happened? When did the symptoms begin? What's the length of time? And so there's so many different factors that make up what happens next, that these are really handled on an individual case basis. We do have a process map to get us to that point and to work us through a bunch of different scenarios, but within each one of those, there are subtleties that we have to manage through that are unpredictable. And, but the beauty of that is every campus has a COVID coordinator, and every campus has a nurse, an RN, a full RN. And so, and if you're at a campus, a district level facility, you also have a coordinator. There's a coordinator in the building where I am. And then we are working, Kathy Marsh, then our director of nursing would be our RN that we would be using when these things happen. And so there are processes, but there is gray within each one of these situations. As hard as that is, I know people want it to be black and white, and so do I, but it's just simply not.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. You know, everybody wants an answer, and there really isn't an answer, is there, to a lot of it?
The answer is we have a process. We have processes that and maps and if this, then this, but then you hit that point of now we have to look at the very specific situation. How far away was everyone? Were they inside or outside? When did the symptoms present them? I mean, you start going through all those, and each one of those might be different. Maybe these kids were only together for 5 minutes outside, but over here there was a 30-minute closed space and people were 6 feet apart, but, you know, this kid took his mask off for a second and this kid kept it on. And I mean, you know, so there's all of those pieces that come into play.
So what do you think? I mean, obviously COVID, but, you know, for this year, looking at where we are, what's going to be the biggest challenge that you think? I mean,
the biggest challenge is the unpredictability of beginning school. To me, because I am the kind of person, I like to know what I'm walking into. I think a lot of people are like that. I want to know the lay of the land. I need to know what's happening. I know a lot of parents feel that way. A lot of kiddos feel that way. And a lot of our staff feel that way. But we've never done this before. We've never done this as communities. We've never done this as school districts. None of us here today in this specific meeting right now or anywhere else has ever dealt with something like this before. There's not training, right, for a COVID response. And so we're all learning together. I think that's the biggest challenge is, for me, there's nothing acceptable but excellence, but we all are having to give ourselves grace as we move through this because of the unpredictability of what we're dealing with. Guidance changes, the disease is changing every time there's new information, and until we get in that moment, it's just the unpredictability.
Right. We did a panel discussion with some of our hospitals and doctors last week in regards to COVID. And just to kind of reiterate what you're saying, one of the doctors made a point that when we were dealing with the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s, that it took 4 years at that time to actually get on the other side of it. And her point was that we were looking at minimum 2, even though our technology is advanced as it is. So that to me is probably the biggest thing, is just understanding that this is it. Is there anything else that you would want to add as far as information for people in regards to school starting or this year coming up?
I think maybe just maybe some other things that people have questions about, again, as we look at the FAQ. We do have right now, I want to make sure that everybody really does understand the virtual versus the remote learning right now. So parents had the ability to, we asked parents to commit by July 20th to either virtual, which means we have set up and created and are staffed a virtual academy using our teachers across MISD. And so that was a very intricate puzzle. because people applied. And then when we needed more teachers, we had to look and see where we could pull from each campus to pull off to the virtual academy. They'll be teaching it from their home campus, but they're in a separate virtual school. And then students who were coming in person, their teachers would be there. But with us going remote till September 8th, now in-person learning has switched to remote. And so those are two very different things. And they had the ability, we asked them to choose by the 20th so that we could staff, but TEA did allow parents up until 2 weeks. So really they could change their mind up until last Wednesday. And so we have been very fast and furiously trying to build classes since Wednesday. So Thursday, Friday were 2 huge days when you think about almost 36,000 kids. So, but they're the way that the learning is set up in the spring. A lot of the learning, when we quickly had to switch, when we didn't return from spring break, we like to refer to that as that was remote emergency, or actually emergency remote ER is kind of what we termed it, because it happened really, really fast and we hadn't done it before. We spent all summer preparing for what we're doing now, and we're trying to give more of a face-to-face experience for our kiddos, where they actually are engaging with their teacher, like you and I are talking right now. They're going to see the face of their teachers, and so that's sort of how. And the sample schedules are online. And so if you have a student in the district, I would encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to look at those, it'll give you a picture of what your kiddo's day is going to look like. We've had a lot of people, we understand a lot of the questions that we're getting right now, Lori, is I work.
Yeah.
I work. What am I supposed to do? We understand. I'm a working mom. I have a 10-year-old. And, when the decision that we made impacted my husband and I as well, because we have an incoming 5th grader, and the rest of our kids are graduated and off to college or married. And so she's the only one at home. So we truly do understand, as a district, our teachers are facing the same thing. That's
right. Yeah.
Right. They're in that boat. Our parents are in that boat. I'm in that boat. We are trying to work really, really, we're working really quickly with faith partners and business partners across our community to try and help with childcare, to set up some childcare options and set up some resource pages for parents. So we know we have a little bit of time, but we're doing this as quickly as we can. We actually had some meetings last week. And so we hope to have some information for our community, for our parents, our families, very, very quickly on just what are some options for them, because it's a really, really challenging thing. That's a huge, huge question that we're getting right now.
But I think that's a good point to make, that this isn't just affecting these parents, it's affecting everybody. We're all affected by it. So, and everybody's trying to do the best that they can. And it changes every day, just about, or it feels like it does. So
it has been changing as much as once a day, and then you're doing something for 1 week, and then you're doing something, then everything changes and you have to turn. Yeah. So we have gotten really, really good at being flexible and resilient, more than we probably ever thought that we would. You have to be. I mean, that's how it is.
Well, it's like, okay, universe, we got it. We're going to be flexible now.
Okay.
We learned the lesson.
Yes. We're going to roll. We're going to bounce with it.
Yeah. So I'll end with the fact that everything you have built, a lot of these answers are on your website. And I know that people don't like to hear that, but like you said, you've got how many questions? Over 300 some odd questions?
We'll get over 300 questions in a 3-day period. I mean, almost. We're taking them into communications, and then we're dividing them out. Yeah. And so we're trying to get back, even though we're adding them to our page, we're still we're responding to the emails too. And so those are going out to the different departments based on category so that we can respond. But then if there's something new, then it's going to be uploaded here as well. And so it has been, that's been an ongoing process for over a month now of just trying to make sure that people get the answers that they're seeking. But again, sometimes those answers are the situation is very, very specific, and we can take you up to a point in that decision-making process. And then at that point, it's going to depend on the actual specifics of that situation as to which direction it goes.
Right. Well, and you know, again, most people, they don't want to have to go look, but it is the best way. It's the most efficient way to assimilate information. So again, please check out, you know, the website for your answers. And there's not always going to be an answer. I think we have to be willing to accept that. And I think if there's, do you have anything else you want to add before we close, or go ahead?
Well, I know a lot of people have, there's another really frequently asked question, Lloyd, that has to do with how's everything going to be cleaned? Like, how do you manage that? You have over 44 campuses, and you have all these other buildings, and you have school buses, and what's the plan? Our custodial team that Oscar Barber heads up under the direction of Joel Falcone has been going like gangbusters to get this stuff worked out. We have medical grade, like I said, medical grade disinfectants, EPA approved. We have an electronic MISD system, and there's one at every campus where kind of like whatever you take Globe Life Field, of course, on a much grander scale between each one of our graduations. But you can come in and you MISD, and it takes care of everything. It completely disinfects the room. And so we have all of those going on. So we have those in all locations. We have sneeze guards up at, you know, reception, at the counseling, you know, at the major gathering points of where people might come together and there's a person there responding. We have those up that our maintenance department built and set up in all the locations. PPE has been, I will give TEA huge credit in that they have shipped, based on our numbers, PPE, face masks, disposable and reusable, face shields, hand sanitizer, gloves. All of that is being sent to the district on top of what we had started collecting as well. And so all of that is going to be available and required, you know, as far as for staff and anyone fourth grade and up. It doesn't mean that students younger cannot wear it. We just know that it's going to be harder for a pre-kindergartner to keep a mask on his or her face, but face shields are available and masks are available for the teachers in those cases and our aides and people on staff. High touch areas are being cleaned repeatedly throughout the day. I mean, I'll be sitting here working in my office and here will come, you know, one of the custodians wiping down the door handle. So, you know, all those high touch areas, keyboards, everything, those are being repeatedly touched throughout the day. And then a lot of deep cleaning and a thorough cleaning every night. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that we are very, very intentional about keeping our buildings very sanitary and very, very clean.
Good. Anything else you want to add before we close out, or?
I just want to say thank you to you, Laura, but thank you to the community. We know that it's a very stressful time for everyone, and we are. Our job ultimately is to try and use data to drive our decisions and to offer choice to our parents and to make sure that the safety and well-being of our students and staff is taken care of. And that's the kind of the lens we're trying to use as we make our decisions. And we just appreciate everyone's patience and grace as we move forward. Well,
you know, I see the same thing in the business community. And I think that the underlying problem is the lack of acceptance of where we are. And I know that in the business community and the people that we talk and see every day, that everyone keeps talking about, well, you know, when we get back to the way things were. And I think that the problem is that we're never going to go back to the way things were. And that the problems that we face today need to be solved at so many different levels. And I think probably the biggest problem is that if you look at the government, whether it's the school district, the state, the city, they're not going to fix this for us. And it's up to each and every one of us to find our own solution, but more importantly, just to accept what is. And we'll close with that. I appreciate your time so much. And I send you good vibes every day, girl.
Thank you. I will take those.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.